Hello and welcome to episode 297 of the Smash Accept podcast. I'm your host, Michael Royer. You can find me on Twitter at DynastyDadFF. This week is crazy. We got the Senior Bowl here already, and we talk about when you're talking about your dynasty rookies, we're looking at different times where your values can go up, where player values are a lot more interesting, and I think the Senior Bowl is that next one. We've seen guys in the past really ascend at the Senior Bowl. For me, the first guy that sticks out was when Cooper Kupp balled out. He balled out at the Senior Bowl, and then everybody started to pay attention, and they started to move up. And a couple of years ago, it was Dameon Pierce. And, last year it was Ricky Purcell. And every year we get a guy that really takes their draft stock to another level at the Senior Bowl. Because let's be honest, 43% of all players drafted in the NFL are coming from the Senior Bowl. They might not be as sexy as these early declares. Nobody better to talk about prospects than my main man, Snoog. How you doing, brother?
I'm feeling real good because I like a lot of the names on this list that we put together. So I'm excited, especially to jump into the running backs. A lot of stud running backs going to the Senior Bowl, even like guys like the quarterbacks that we'll talk about, wide receivers too. There's a lot of good players at this year's Senior Bowl compared to even last. Like I didn't think last year's there was a lot of good people at all. Like I really didn't.
No, we were all talking Marshawn Lloyd.
Yeah, like the running back class was trash last year. And the quarterback class, like other than Bo Nix, I don't even think Penix went to the Senior Bowl because he went to the Natty. So it was like just Bo Nix. Like he was a big riser. So yeah, let's jump into this. I'm excited to kind of talk about some of these guys and some of the sleepers and stuff like that. So
a lot of you guys, I know we talk about it a lot, but you've been asking for the link to the Patreon. We've, Brock hooked us up with a new inlay showing you guys right there on the bottom. Join our Patreon to smash this offseason. Patreon.com/smash accept for all of our content. You get everything that Snoog's doing with rookie prospects. You're getting all the startup things that I'm doing right now to try to get you guys ready for the next level. You got rookie values. You have right now a group that's talking 24/7, guys that are doing startups, guys that are, other sharps in the community where you can bounce things off of. If you ever wanted a community where you can talk shop all the time, this is it, and then on top of that, you're getting everything that Snoog and I are doing. You're getting all our extra work. So make sure you guys check that out. So the Senior Bowl quarterbacks right now. Right now, for me, we're looking at some names here. You got Dillon Gabriel, Will Howard, Riley Leonard. But I think it's between two big guys here that are going to have their draft stock rise the most. And that's Jaxson Dart and Jalen Milroe. And very different type quarterbacks. Let's start with Dart. Dart is someone right now, 6'2", 225, a dual threat pocket passer. He's someone that, does a great job, big time arm. We saw it where 4,279 yards, led all of the SEC last season. He can make all the throws. I was comping him to Carson Wentz. A lot of people didn't like that, but he has that big time arm and the mobility to go with it. I know he's your QB3 in this class and someone that we're really trying to see. What do we want to see at the Senior Bowl? Like we want to see him in competition against other top level guys that are in this. What do we need to see from Jaxson Dart this week?
Yeah, I think he can have a rise at the Senior Bowl like Michael Penix and Bo Nix had. They both ended up being top 12 picks. People were kind of talking about them. Are they first rounders? What are they going to kind of do? They both had good Senior Bowls, and Bo Nix got a big draft stock boost from the Senior Bowl, in my opinion. So Jaxson Dart is the guy there at the quarterback position for me to get that type of bump and sneak into the first round. Like you said, he's had 2 seasons over 3,000 plus yards in the SEC. This year, he had a 69.2% completion percentage, led college football with like 10.8 yards per attempt. Absolute gunslinger. His tape is great too. A lot of raw ability and a lot of like, okay, this guy needs to go and sit, but he has the fundamentals and the traits and the tools and the arm talent. Decision making, sometimes he's a little bit inaccurate at times, but he's a gunslinger. He can break sacks. He can move in the pocket. He has good rushing upside. He's a guy that had, I think, 600 plus rushing yards this year. He has good rushing profile for his collegiate career in general. And he's not Lamar Jackson, but he's not a statue. So he's a guy that can move around a bit, kind of be like a guy that can get 400, 500 rushing yards at best in the NFL, but give you that fantasy football value. He seems like a poised man, like a poised kid, 21 years old. He has decent size, 6'2", 225 is what he's projected at. Posted a 90-plus PFF grade this year. The best thing about it is he had 4,200 passing yards this year and only had Trey Harris for like 7.5 games. Him and Trey Harris are doing numbers together, and I truly think if Trey Harris never got hurt, everyone would be talking about Jaxson Dart like he's a locked-in top 10 draft pick. and he would have probably had 5,000 plus yards. He probably would have been the runner-up or one of the runner-ups for Heisman. He probably would have had like 50 plus touchdowns. He was on pace to have a ridiculous year with Trey Harris. They both were in the SEC as a 21-year-old quarterback. Like, everything points towards Jaxson Dart being a good riser, especially post Senior Bowl era. So I want to see him, see how he commands, see how he's a leader. I want to see him making all the throws he made at Ole Miss at the Senior Bowl, throwing guys open, throwing the ball downfield, lead in the practice. That's the thing that coaches and scouts look for. Is he a leader? Can he command an offense? Can he be the guy in the huddle? I think there's a lot that can help boost up Jaxson Dart's draft stock coming up at this Senior Bowl.
We've talked about that he has a big time arm, but what people don't pay attention to is, I mean, he ran for over 1,500 yards over his career. He's a guy that can, we talk about guys having a rushing floor. He's someone that I think at the next level as a starter would have that 300 to 400 yard rushing floor that we're looking at for a guy that's a prime fantasy contributor. Someone that I think will rise his stock here. And the thing I want to see is Ole Miss is not a pro style offense that like the biggest knock that you see is, they kind of dumb things down for the quarterbacks. They make the plays, a lot more accessible. Getting to work with an NFL coaching staff the entire week, see how he adapts to, what they're going to work with and how that's going to go, I think is a very big thing, because he's not coming from a system where you're like, okay, he's not coming from Alabama, like we're going to talk about with the next guy. He's not coming from somewhere where you're like, all right, this is a pro style offense. He's going to make a nice, easy transition, and that to me is the thing I want to see the most. Is I want to see how he works, because he's got a cannon. Like, he has an absolute arm, and he can run, and he's athletic. And I think he is going to promote himself, has the biggest potential to make himself a round one guy out of this Senior Bowl, more so than anybody else. The other guy is Jalen Milroe, and I know you hate Jalen Milroe, and it's like, my man's got a rocket for an arm. He can absolute sling it downfield. The accuracy is a little bit rough, but when you look at a guy like Jalen Milroe, we talked about that he ran for 20 touchdowns this past year. He reminds me so much, I keep saying it every single time, of a Jalen Hurts light, because when you watch the tape, the way he runs the football, he's patient, and then he accelerates, and he is just a phenomenal runner when it comes to there. And a lot of people are starting to project him into late round one of the NFL draft. And if that happens, if he has a great Senior Bowl here, he's someone that is a big time competitor, a high character guy. I think both of these quarterbacks could be round one quarterbacks by the time this is all said and done here at the Senior Bowl. I know you don't love the idea of that, but it doesn't matter for fantasy. If he is going to be out there, 1,300 rushing yards, 32 touchdowns over the last 2 seasons, he is an elite, gifted athlete when it comes to running the football. Can somebody, project him to be a much better passing quarterback? I hope so. That's the biggest issue. What are you looking to see from Jalen Milroe this week at the Senior Bowl?
I want to see that he can play the quarterback position even a little bit, because he's horrible at it. And like the tape I watched,
he's a runner.
I got through like maybe 6 plays, and he threw like 3 passes over his receiver's head against Tennessee. This is like right away. Like, horrible accuracy, threw a pick, threw another bad pick, just looked really off as a thrower, and he had a really bad year this year as a thrower. But this is where you can make the case for a guy like Jalen Milroe is 2 seasons with 800 plus rush yards and 12 plus rushing touchdowns in both seasons. He hit 20 plus rushing touchdowns this year. He's a guy that I think definitely needs to sit for a year. I don't know if the NFL is going to like him enough to trust him to go in there and be a starter from day one, or even just be a starter. That's where I'm struggling with him. It's like, he's so bad at the quarterback position and getting through his progressions, his reads, his footwork's off, his accuracy's horrible, throws a lot of picks. Like, things like, can a coach change this? I don't know. To me, he feels like what Justin Fields is right now today, but like worse. Like, Fields can see the field better and throw more accurate football than Jalen Milroe by far. He's like, I could see him having a Taysom Hill role in an offense. I could see him being kind of like a 1 or 2 year bridge quarterback. He's a really damn good rusher, and he's a great athlete. And he's like, and he coming from a system like Bama. So it's like, I can see if a team like a Rams or one of these teams like wants to take a shot on a guy in like round 2 or maybe like early round 3 or whatever it is. and they missed out on their quarterback, and they got a guy like Stafford that's going to retire in a year or two, or the Jets, and they want to just take a chance on a guy. I could see a team like that doing it, but he needs to sit for a year, I think, in my opinion. But I mean, he's top 5 quarterback in this class for me still, just because of the rushing upside. And like when he starts cooking, he's really, really good when he gets going with his play style. It's just, can he stand in the pocket and do anything? No, you don't need to be like that today, but you have to be able to throw the damn football and put together an offense and put together a flow like Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels can do. I don't think he's like those guys at all.
Yeah, the QB6 in this class for me is another guy that's going to be at the Senior Bowl, and that's Dillon Gabriel. 4 3,000+ yard seasons, 72.9% completion percentage in 2024, 3 seasons of 30 passing touchdowns in 3 different systems, 25 rushing touchdowns in the last 3 years. For me, he's just he's a more athletic, lesser armed Michael Penix Jr. I think he's going to go somewhere and hear me out, because this has some value in your 3rd, 4th round of your rookie drafts, where you draft a guy you already mentioned potentially with the Rams, right? Let's say Dillon Gabriel becomes the backup for the Rams. Like, he's someone that talent-wise, he's better than an Aiden O'Connell. He's a guy that, he's going to be a backup, but I think there's some potential there that he's one of those guys that if he's a backup for a year or two and an injury happens, that he could be a guy that starts, he gets some spot starts, he gets an opportunity. And just like when you drafted Gardner Minshew in the 4th round of your rookie drafts, or you drafted, Aiden O'Connell in the 5th, Dillon Gabriel is one of those guys I think you're going to get late 3rd, maybe 4th round, where he's going to get an opportunity and he's going to rise in value once he plays the game.
Yeah, I agree with that. And he put together a pro style offense at Oregon this year. So, and even at Oklahoma, he just had really good stretches there. I mean, he won some big games, especially with Oregon this year. I mean, they beat Ohio State. They had that crazy run. They were the first team. He's a good player. He could put together a good offense. He's old. He's not very big. Like, there's a lot of if the arm talent's not through the roof. There's a lot of those questions. But can he be an Aiden O'Connell? Yes. Can he be one of these type of guys that comes in as a bridge guy, maybe for a year or two and gets a start because he's experienced and he knows the game well and can understand a playbook and he's coachable. So much that goes into the quarterback position for can they get on the football field. He's one of those guys that could probably get on the football field because of his intangibles, his IQ, his experience in college football with pro style offenses and stuff along those lines. So I don't think he's like a Bo Nix, Michael Penix 5th, 6th year type prospect at all. But I think he's like a round 3 guy, like a maybe round 3, round 4 type draft pick for a team like that wants a good backup.
And you talked about experience and with winning. There's 2 guys here playing for a national championship in Will Howard and Riley Leonard. Are either of these guys? I mean, Will Howard went on a tear over the college playoffs. And a lot of people, when they see our rankings of our quarterbacks, and we don't have either of these guys particularly high, can they rise in value here with their draft stock at the Senior Bowl? And are either of these guys ever guys that would be competent starters in the NFL, or just like Gabriel, are they backup quarterbacks that, given an opportunity, could do all right in the proper offense?
Will Howard and Riley Leonard both have pretty decent rushing upside. Will Howard put together a pro style offense and did really well and ran with it. Missed a lot of throws. He's hot and cold. I don't think these guys are ever like NFL starters, but I think they're good backups with early day 3 draft capital type range, maybe late day 2 if a team needs a guy that bad and missed out. But I don't really see them or Gabriel ever being like a guy on a franchise that's like the quarterback. They're not like the day 2 steals. Like, I see Quinn Ewers is that guy for me. He's not going to the Senior Bowl, but he's that guy for me. That would be like that day 2 steal, like that Derek Carr, one of those type of quarterbacks, the Russell Wilson that ends up just being a stud just because of the pedigree, ran that Texas offense for a while, pro style offense, young player still. He's like 21 years old. Like, he's the type of guy that, or Dart, like one of those type of guys is the type of players that I could see being like that steal on day 2. Like we saw with Jalen Hurts, even like those type of guys. I don't think the other 3 that we just mentioned can be that, but I think they could be good backup guys that, if Gardner Minshew goes down, then he can step up and be a starter, right? Like that type of player. So
now the position that we love. I mean, this running
let's
back
get to the running
is
backs,
fantastic. Man. I am the guy that I think will rise his stock the absolute most out of the entire Senior Bowl and out of the running back position itself is Devin Neal. Devin
Me
Neal is
too.
just so patient and an explosive running back coming off back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, 16 touchdowns this year. When I watch him, he's just so patient behind the line and then just bursts through. And I think this is someone that we're ultimately too low on at this point. Where in this particular scenario at the Senior Bowl, when we see him thrive, this is something that this stock could go through the roof. He could put himself into day 2, second round draft capital and really shine to blow up draft boards.
Yeah, I had a lot of time to watch. I got through my top 7 running back rankings, just deep film dives, watched like 6 to 10 games of them the past like 2 weeks. Devin Neal and the next guy we'll talk about, Cam Skattebo, are both in my top 7. They're fighting in that like 5 to 7 range with the guy that is a consensus top 2 to 3 RB in Amari and Hampton. But Devin Neal and Cam Skattebo are just more complete players to me on film than an Amari and Hampton is. Better elusiveness, more explosive in the short areas, can make defenders miss. Like, these are the type of things that translate. They're better, more dynamic receiving backs. I mean, Devin Neal's a guy, he had 60 missed forced tackles this year, 89.9 PFF grade, good yards after contact per attempt for his size. I mean, he hit like 3.8, which isn't bad. He's a guy that had a true freshman breakout. He's hit 20 plus receptions multiple times, 1,280 plus rushing yards. Like, he can do it all. I think he had 3 years with 1,000 plus rushing yards too. Like, he's a guy that was the guy in Kansas, was the workhorse guy for them. Shifty. My player comps for him is kind of like that Tajay Spears, James Cook blend, like those type of like day 2 type running backs that are elusive, good in space, good explosiveness, good pass catchers. And then Cam Skattebo, the next guy here that I think these two are going to be the face of the Senior Bowl in general. Cam Skattebo carried that Arizona State offense. He almost brought them to play against Ohio State for a chance to go to the Natty. Like, he carried them against Texas. He carried them all season. I mean, this is a guy that had 94.1 PFF grade, 92 missed tackles forced this year, was an absolute menace. He clocked in at like 5'11", 225 at the Senior Bowl weigh-ins. That's what I want to see, because when I watch his film, I see a B-back, a bruiser. I see a David Montgomery type person, a guy that can catch the ball decent, pound between the tackles, run through you, posted 4+ yards after contact per attempt, shifty player like Demont. I see so much David Montgomery in his game, and I think he's going to be a guy that goes day 2. He has a very, very good receiving profile. He's more than just a swing route check down guy. He won all over the field. He posted crazy yards per route numbers for a running back. And he's just a guy, I mean, he had like 1,800, or did he have, I think he might have had close to like 2,000 all-purpose yards this year for Arizona State. Like, he showed up. Yeah, he did. He had over 2,300 all-purpose yards, 1,700 rushing yards, and 600 receiving yards. That is like absolutely ridiculous for a running back. Cam Skattebo is fighting for a top 5 spot in my running back rankings right now, because I'm watching his film. The burst and the short area quickness for a guy that clocks in at 225 is like, wow, this guy is literally Dave Montgomery. A team's going to fall in love with him, and he's going to play from day 1 because he's good in pass pro, good in the receiving game, and he's a power back between the tackles who can make people miss an open field. So sign me up for Devin Neal and Cam Skattebo. Let's jump into this next guy, because I know you and I loved him last year, and he disappointed big time.
Yeah, but before we even move into that, I mean, for me, this is why when you see us talk about the excitement, we start to talk about these running back prospects. There are literally 10 guys who would have been higher up than what we had anything last year. And that's saying something. I mean, that's kind of sad. And we saw Bucky emerge out of that, but we're talking about these guys have so much higher ceiling than anything that we saw out of that class last year, because we were promoting guys. We were really pushing up Benson. We were pushing up Corum. We were pushing up opportunities with Marshawn Lloyd and Jalen Wright. And now I think we're going to see some absolute dogs come out of this class where you're going to change your running back position so much. Snoog, I mean, this class, I mean, there were guys that we talked about last year with Damian Martinez, Trevor Etienne, so many guys where we're like, there's some decent shots on here. But for me, Ollie Gordon was the guy in 2023. We were like, this guy's a top 5 running back in this class. He was someone that, scoring touchdowns every single week, always over 100 yards, was able to catch the ball. And this past year, their offense at Oklahoma State just left him down. And we didn't see the same things, but I think we had a lot of the actual team issues more so than just Ollie Gordon issues, because what we saw in 2023 was some elite level tape, and I think he's getting lost in the sauce a little bit. He needs to show out here or he's going to get passed by all these other guys. He needs to have a really good. The other two guys, I think, shine at the Super Bowl or at the Senior Bowl. Man, the Super Bowl still. You said James Cook, and I'm like, you mentioned James Cook. Put James Cook on the damn field. Like, sorry, you can't end the game.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's neither here nor there as a Bills fan. But Ollie Gordon has the most to gain from this Senior Bowl at the running back position.
I agree. I mean, this is a guy that won the Doak Walker Award as the best running back in college football in 2023. 20 years old still, very young player. I mean, he broke out as a true sophomore. He had a good year this year. His year wasn't terrible on paper. Like, he still had a really good year. He just got half the workload he got last year. I mean, he's a guy, 90-plus PFF rush grade, 68-plus missed tackles forced. I mean, he's big back. He's like 6'1", 220-plus is what he clocked in at the Senior Bowl. Early declared, checks a lot of boxes you're looking for. He had 39 receptions in that season in 2024 or 2023. Had another 30-plus this year, so he can catch the ball pretty well. Like, he's a decent pass catcher. I'm seeing a lot of Jordan Howard and Latavius Murray in his game, like kind of what those guys were in their peaks, like being a guy that could be 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns, maybe catch 30, 40, 50 passes as like a ceiling. So like a top 10 to 12 fringe guy if he hits his stride and hits his ceiling. But he's really, really elusive, and he fits through tight spaces and can cover up a lot of yardage for how big he is. Like, you don't see people as nimble and as elusive as he is when he's that size, especially when you're like 6'2". Like, it's a lot harder to be. He moves really well. So I'm excited. I haven't gotten to his full deep dive yet for film. I've just broken down his prospect profile, looked at his analytic model. Good friend with Dynasty Zoltan on Twitter, me and him. He built out an entire running back model that he uses. So I got to see kind of what Ollie Gordon checks out like in his model. His 2023 season was absolutely insane in this model. And then after this year, things get a lot shakier. So I'm excited to see how he plays out. I think these three running backs we just named all can go on day 2 and all should go on day 2. I think they all would have been top 2 to 3 running backs for sure. They would have all been, I'm just going to say it, they would have all been RB1 for me last year. And that sounds crazy to say. On paper and based on their film and the prospect pedigree, though, they all would have been RB1. And I'll stand on that because they're just, the production's off the charts. They're all young. They all can do it all. Like, that's what you're looking for in running backs. They all had good dominator ratings. They dominated their offenses. They were their entire offense. That's what you want to look for in running backs. The next two, though, I think these guys have the chance to be early day 3 picks. RJ Harvey from USF or UCF and Damian Martinez from Miami. Damian Martinez, I'll start with. I'll let you hit on RJ Harvey, but Damian Martinez was a guy I really liked at Oregon State. Like, he was a guy I was projecting to be a top 5 to 6 running back in this class. He got the NIL deal. He came to Miami. He had a good year. I mean, like, he had a very, very solid career in college football, and he was a guy that I saw a lot of Ramondre Stevenson in his game. Like, he's a guy that was elusive. He was powerful. He's had 3 seasons with 980-plus rushing yards, 2 with 1,000-plus this past year. I mean, he broke out as a true freshman with great production. Decent pass catcher, not really. He's like a 15, 17 reception type guy. So he's going to be a guy that more so like a 2-down grinder, elusive type player. But, I mean, he's a guy that's coming off a year with 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. Very efficient career, too. I mean, he's averaged over 6+ yards per carry in every single season. So I just think he's a guy that could be like a day 2 riser. I see a little bit of Dameon Pierce in his profile and his skill set, kind of like that power back with pretty good elusiveness, can run through your face type player, can handle a decent amount of a workload and stuff along that nature. But I mean, he posted 4.46 yards after contact per attempt this year, and he hit 45+ missed tackles forced in all 3 seasons. So good profile, not elite, but good profile, can be a guy that gets in and hops in as a 2-down grinder right away. So I'm excited to see Damian Martinez and what he can do at the Senior Bowl to help boost his draft stock.
Yeah, and Harvey's a little bit smaller of a guy. He's at that 5'8", 5'9", maybe 208 once he comes in there, once we see what guys start to weigh in. And I think, we talk about that a lot at the Combine and the Senior Bowls. We want to see these guys hit certain weight thresholds, and 208's a little small for a guy his size. We want to see him more in that 215, 220 range, but he does bring a dynamic skill set. I mean, he's someone with elite level speed. I think he's going to run a sub 4.4, very elusive, that makes him an intriguing prospect for the next level. I think that he really needs to work on his pass protection. He really needs to beef up a little bit and get a little bit more. And that's that tricky spot, Snoog, is these guys, when they're undersized, we're like, they got to put on some weight. But what makes them special, like a guy like RJ Harvey, is that speed. And if that does that speed still translate over once they put on some size? I think get him in the zone blocking scheme. He's someone that could be a nice complementary back. And in last year's class, we were talking about guys that were going to be secondary insurance running backs. And I think RJ Harvey is one of those guys that is a nice insurance back. If you own any of those guys that we talked about in the past of being insurance level running backs, and we're not talking about your David Montgomerys, your Tajay Spears, but we're talking about those guys that are, Alexander Madison types. You need to use them to move them up because they're all getting replaced. There are at least 15 running backs that are coming into this draft that are going to replace those guys and push them out of the way. The other guy that I think is going to get into a nice complimentary spot after 1,000 yards this year, 47 receptions. Woody Marks is I'm starting to dig into his tape a little bit more. This is one of the best pass catching running backs coming out of this class, but a lot of people aren't talking about him.
Yeah, he's a really good, fun change of pace running back. And I honestly really think RJ Harvey is too. I think they're both like those good change of pace guys. I mean, Woody Marks had 83 receptions as a sophomore. Like that's absolutely insane. Ridiculous. That was at Mississippi State too. So that was in the SEC. He was kind of used as like a scat back, change of pace guy in college. So I don't really see him ever being like a 3-down guy in the NFL. I think he's like a scat back, change of pace, like Jerick McKinnon, like one of these type of Samaje Perine type of guys that can give you some decent weeks, can give you some good fantasy floor if he is the starter due to injury. But I mean, he had a ridiculous receiving career. I mean, he had 80 plus receptions, 60 plus receptions, 45 plus twice. Like he basically hit 45 plus in 4 out of 5 years. He's had some injuries, a little bit smaller of a player, but his burst is special. He's really good in space. Walmart DeAndre Swift is what I see on tape. Like that type of, or kind of a little bit of like a Marshawn Lloyd. I know they both went to USC, but I see a little Marshawn Lloyd as well. They both have the injury history too. Good in space, kind of explosive runner in short areas. RJ Harvey, another one kind of in that same range. I see a little bit of Tajay Spears there. I mean, back-to-back 1,500 plus yard seasons, hit 20 plus touchdowns this year, 16 plus the year before. They both weren't great after contact, and they both were really good at making defenders miss. So that's kind of the type of players they are. And they're both decent in the passing game. Woody Marks is very good in the passing game. So, again, you can name like 6 day 3 guys in this class that could be good risers and could be good dart throws to take shots on. It all depends where they're going to land. But these 3 guys that we just named, I think, are going to be the guys that are kind of spearheaded as the top guys at the Senior Bowl.
When I saw 249 career receptions, I was like, is that a typo?
Yeah.
I
thought he played wideout or something at first, and I had to look at it like 3 times. And I was like, wow, no, he's just him.
Are there any other guys? I mean, some of these are even converted wideouts, like Brashard Smith at times. But I mean, like Smith, ETN, maybe Donovan Edwards, Damian Martinez. We already talked about. I mean, is there anybody else that the Jarquez Hunter, like in Allen? Are any of these guys where you're like, okay, they could shine out, they could really look to impress here at the Senior Bowl, where they could get some day 3 draft capital?
Yeah, I could see Trevor Etienne and Brashard Smith being guys that kind of boost their draft capital up. I think they had good production profiles, decent film, kind of complete players, can catch the ball pretty well. I think it's just going to come down to, though, like I think Devin Neal, Ollie Gordon, Cam Skattebo are the only 3 players I really project as the 3-down workhorses going into the Senior Bowl that could do it all, run the ball well at a high level and catch the ball well. The rest of the guys we're talking about here, like ETN, RJ Harvey, Damian Martinez, they're in that like 10 to 15 range, or like that 12 to 15 range for me. They're 1-2 guys. Like they're guys that are going to be either scat backs or power backs on first and second down type players that are going to see the field. They would slot in as top 5 to 6 to 7 players in our class last year with like the Audric Estimates, the Braylon Allens, those type of guys, in my opinion.
And even moving over to the wide receiver position, I think 2 or 3 guys here that are probably going to get some day 2 draft capital. I mean, we would like to see. Trey Harris is not going to be there, but Tez Johnson, a little bit smaller, 5'10", 165, but someone who's just got absolute burner type speed, sure-handed, ball tracking abilities. This is the perfect place for him to really showcase what he can do. He's someone that, honestly, he's very lean. Like he's he's not somebody that we're going to see if he shies away from contact. We're going to see if he's willing to work in the middle of the field. I mean, we're going to see what Tez Johnson can do. And if he shines at the Senior Bowl, could be a round 2, early round 3, type wide receiver with the kind of speed that he has, because he's definitely going to test out close to that 4.3 speed.
Is he going to the Senior Bowl?
Yeah.
Trey Harris?
That's what I have. No, Tez Johnson.
Oh, I thought you said Trey Harris for a second.
No, I said Trey Harris.
Wait. That's why I started looking it up. I was like, I didn't think he was. He went last year, though. Tez Johnson. Yeah, you nailed it with Tez Johnson then. Absolutely. He's the guy that he's going to be with Dillon Gabriel, who he played with this year, too, which is even better. He's the guy that's going to pop out in one-on-ones. You already know no one's going to be able to guard him. He's super shifty, super fast off the line of scrimmage. Analytic profile is phenomenal. I mean, he had 2 seasons with over 3.5+ yards per route run. 1,000+ yards this year, back-to-back years with 100+ targets, 80+ receptions, 90+ PFF grades. Like, he checks a lot of boxes. I mean, he broke out as a sophomore. He's one of those players that just produced, like, no matter what, always got his. So even when Evan Stewart, this big 5-star transfer, has all this hype comes, it was still Tez Johnson. He got his. So I'm excited for him. He's like fighting in that like tier like 5, 6, 7, 8 range for me. Like, if the NFL buys into him and he goes in the second round of the NFL draft, then he's going to be high for me, because I think he could be like a Josh Downs, Jordan Addison light, a Tank Dell light, one of those type of guys that's a good number 2, number 3 on an offense. But he's shifty. He's going to dominate in one-on-ones. I think he's going to be a big riser, especially playing with his college QB there.
And we need this for Dynasty. We need this for guys, there's Ayomanor, there's Restrepo, there's Royals, there's guys here at the Senior Bowl.
We need the wide receivers to have a good day. We need them to have a good day.
Tez is the one that separates himself out of there. I mean, we obviously have, a big 5, and then all of a sudden, let's see what we can add to this. I mean, I think guys like Restrepo, Royals, and Ayomanor, they have, if they go to the right spot, if they got the right landing spot, and we're talking about, we want guys to be inside that. We talk about elite level wide receivers go inside the top 5 to 8, and then we have an area of 12 to 20, and then we have that area of like 25 to 43. You start to get those guys where you're like, these are going to be elite level wide receiver 2s. Then we need these other guys. We need these guys to finish out round 2, early round 3, because round 4 wide receivers is just not happening in the NFL. It rarely, you're throwing darts. Restrepo, I think, he's someone that's going to show some speed. Ayomanor is a guy that's going to absolutely dominate some slot type situations. Royals as well. So out of these 3 guys, I mean, sell me on who your favorite guy is here, and let's talk about what they can show here at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, Jalen Royals is my favorite guy here. I think he has the highest upside after like the big 4 to 5 wide receivers in the class. Elite yak player, can win downfield. He was pacing 1,400+ yards and 100+ receptions this year before he had a season-ending injury. I mean, he posted 7.9 yards after catch per reception, 1,000+ yards in back-to-back seasons, 15 total touchdowns this year, 3+ yards per route run. I see a lot of like Rashee Rice, Jaden Reed, some of these other guys, like those day 2-ish type prospects that went to those under like those smaller Power 5 schools or Power 4 schools or whatever. I don't even think Utah State is a Power 4 school, so never mind. But those smaller schools, right, that kind of dominated at there and dominated the production. His short area quickness and his burst is ridiculous. Like, he catches a slant or like a screen pass and he can change gears from 0 to 100 very, very quickly. So I see a lot of like better Malachi Corley on tape, like a guy who also went day 2 that can win downfield. Like, Corley wasn't great downfield, wasn't great as a route runner. Jalen Royals gets a lot of separation and he gets a lot of winning downfield. Like, he wins downfield consistently. I'd say he's my guy after like the top 5 guys, like for the wide receiver position for sure. And you can see the profile up here. Like, it's really strong for a guy like this. And he's still 21 years old. Sell me on your guy, because we know your guy's Elik Ayomanor. So let's jump into it and talk to us about him and kind of what he could be, what his comps are, and kind of his production profile.
Yeah, I mean, I think he has the physical tools that we're looking for. Someone that is I think he's a polished route runner, someone that, he has speed, strong hands, someone that can high point the ball. I think he's going to be, he played primarily on the outside in college, but I think he projects really well with the way he runs routes to be a strong guy across the middle, someone that can run in the slot. I think he has a promising prospect. A lot of people are starting to we start to look at where guys are coming from, right? Like people don't like Savion Williams because he's from TCU, and people don't like Ayomanor because he's from Stanford. And then you start to think of the last guy that came out of there, right? And you start to try to assess where those things are. But I think he can win at the next level. And I think a lot of people, I mean, I've seen people have him in the late first. I think ultimately he goes in the second round, but I want to see where he goes in the second round. He needs to go to a room that, the targets. I don't think he has an elite level, athleticism. He's someone that's a plus athlete, but he doesn't have anything that's elite. He's just very good at a lot of different things.
Yeah, I agree with that. I really like that take by you, and I think that that's going to be really good for a guy like Ayomanor and Royals to just cement, and Tez Johnson to cement round 2 draft capital right away. Because if they can go in that range, they're going to be good values in that mid-second round of rookie drafts right after all these running backs go. So 3 guys, I think this is kind of like a tier in our rankings right there with them. But the last guy that I'll jump into, you talked a little bit about Restrepo there, but I'll talk about Jaden Higgins a little bit. Iowa State guy, really solid profile. Analytic profile actually screams pretty well for me, 90-plus PFF grade. I mean, he had 87-plus receptions as his best season. He had 130-plus targets. 7.3 yards after catch per reception for a guy that's like 6'3", 6'4". Really good numbers there. He posted a season with 3+ yards per route run, 3 seasons with 80+ targets. So he's a guy that was one of those producers as soon as he came over to Iowa State the past 2 seasons, produced back-to-back seasons, was the guy there. Jalen Milroe is another guy going to the Senior Bowl from Iowa State who produced. So it's kind of interesting to see like they were kind of competing, and Jaden Higgins stood out more to me. Kind of like a DJ Chark type player, like bigger, but can separate well and can win downfield pretty well. I don't know how he's going to test athletically, probably not extremely well, but I also see a little bit of Michael Gallup, a bigger version. Like he wins the contested catches situations pretty well, makes those flashy catches downfield, good body control. That's where I'm at with Jaden Higgins. Sell us on Xavier Restrepo, and then let's jump into the tight ends here.
Well, Restrepo, I think, is going to give you a nice deep threat. He's someone that I think, he has back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. He's going to be able to stretch the defense. I think at the next level, he might be more of a guy that's better at stretching the defense than he is actually for fantasy football purposes. But I think it's going to really depend on where he lands. The best pass catcher in this entire Senior Bowl isn't even a wide receiver, but it's tight end that we just did our tight end show. If you guys haven't, make sure you guys smash the subscribe button to the YouTube channel. We just did our tight end special, but Harold Fannin Jr. from Bowling Greens with over 117 receptions, 1,500 receiving yards. This is the guy that we want to see. Like we at the quarterback position, we want to see Milroe and Dart, and running backs, we want to see Skattebo, and we want to see Neal, and wide receiver Tez Johnson. But man, do I want to see what Harold Fannin can do against better level competition, right? Bowling Greens isn't where you're looking at seeing that top-notch competition, but what can he do against these other guys? He can really rise his stock into that early second, late first of the NFL draft. And if that happens, you're going to get a steal in your tight end premium leagues, because in this class with all these running backs, a guy like Harold Fannin Jr. could be an absolute bargain in the early second, late first of your rookie drafts.
Yeah, the thing that pops for me is he's 20 years old, elite analytical profile and production profile. I mean, you talked about the 100+ receptions, 1,500+ yards, 11+ total touchdowns. We know the production's elite. What they're going to want to see from him at the Senior Bowl is, I want to see him run routes. I want to see him against this higher end competition, because he had a small glimpse of it versus Penn State and Texas A&M. Dominated. Like he had like 10+ receptions and like 140+ yards and a touchdown in both of those games. So he's a guy that, I mean, combining for over 300+ yards against two of the top teams in the country, top 20 teams in the country. That's the guy coming from Bowling Green. So you want to see him run routes. You want to see the versatility at the Senior Bowl. You want to see that he's going to be younger than everybody there, because now they have the ability to opt in as true juniors. Even though it's called the Senior Bowl, you can still opt in to help boost your draft stock. I think he's going to come in, command, lead that tight end group, be the best player on the field, and run really good routes and show his versatility off. And he's going to be a guy that goes in that second round drafts range, I think. And you never know with the draft and how good he does in the Senior Bowl, but I could see him being an early day 2 draft pick for me. I'm a big Harold Fannin guy, and I love this tight end and running back class a lot for the value, because everyone thinks the class sucks. So this is where you get the good values, and we're talking about it here.
Yeah, and I see a lot of people like they're just talking about how bad they think the class is. Go buy your seconds right now because you're gonna get Harold Fannin Jr., who isn't. He accelerates well. He's an absolute nightmare with mismatched potentials. I think we see him projected right now like a 4.62. If he can run a low 4.5s, I think you're going to see his draft stock rise even more because he is someone that you're going to see him just at that F tight end position set things up and be a guy that contributes right off the bat. And this is fun because we talk about, like I said, 43% of all guys that get drafted in the NFL go from the Senior Bowl, or guys that go to the Senior Bowl get drafted, and I think you're going to see some guys here that you haven't gotten a lot of exposure to because these aren't your Ashton Junties. These aren't your Quinshon Judkins. This is not your Tet McMillan. These are the guys that, they played it out. They were there. Some of the guys were late bloomers, like we saw Skattebo blow up his senior year. Other guys, Devin Neal's put together 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons. So don't double count things right now. If they do what we think they're going to do, they're going to rise. That's going to happen. But if a guy's fast, like if Tez Johnson runs a really fast 40, like that's not something that we're going to just blow the top off. But we're looking at guys where, 2 years ago, we were looking for players like Dameon Pierce just kind of showed up out of nowhere. And he's a backup now, but he rose his stock where he was winning you games his rookie season. So make sure you guys are paying attention to those things. Make sure you guys follow us. You can see on the screen, I'm at DynastyDad FF. He's at FF Snoog. Got the Patreon link down there below. Help us out with the subscriptions. I mean, this month alone, we've added 500 new subscribers. You can be number 501. Start to look into that Patreon where we're doing Smash Accept Startup 17 leagues, Snoog. It's wild. But we're going to do 17 through 20 in the offseason. All of our rookie rankings, all of our Superflex rankings, everything in one place, your one-stop shop that you've got to get into. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and enjoy the process.